Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of BrewCraic with Loughran Brewing Stores. Today, we have some extremely exciting guests with us. Since it is hop harvest down in the Southern Hemisphere, New Zealand and Australia, we've invited some of our best friends on from Hop Revolution. We have Dr. Susan Wheeler, shall I say, and Jason Judkins, who are, in my opinion, two of the soundest, most amazing people in the craft beer industry. And I'll let them laugh at that. But luckily, besides amazing people, they grow some absolutely outstanding hops down on the South Island of New Zealand. So welcome and thanks for joining us, Jason and Susan.
Yay. Thanks.
Oh, and we also have James Loughran here as well.
Oh, don't mind me. I'm merely the sideshow. I'm merely the sideshow.
So I guess the big things here to talk about today are Hop Revolution, you guys' background, and most importantly, those sexy green cones that you're currently picking off of bines, probably getting ready to start the day right now. So Susan, let's start with you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? I mean, I've heard the story, but I think you started off in the wine industry growing grapes. Am I correct?
I did. Well, that was my I suppose my first passion. I did a PhD in viticulture in Australia, where I focused on South Australia and the wines down there, and really enjoyed it. You know, the wine industry is heaps of fun. But after a time there, we came back to New Zealand and with the family. And I hate to say, but in 2010, New Zealand was just focused on Sauvignon Blanc. Actually, it still is. And as a scientist, it's not a very fun grape to study, in my opinion. So I just was looking around for what my skills could sort of transfer to. And I decided to look at growing hops. So my first project was seeing if I could get hops to grow in different parts of New Zealand. And from that, I connected with some investors who decided to take it from a research project to a commercial venture. So we entered and bought our first farm, which is the farm that Jason and I are sitting on now. And it was a green field. So we had to build this whole hop farm from scratch. And it was a pretty daunting endeavor. We started that over nearly 4 years ago. And frankly, we didn't know what we were doing, and we didn't realize how big it was when we started, which is possibly for the best, because I'm not sure I would have carried on if I realized how hard it was. But
blissful ignorance, I think, is a term.
Yeah, I'm a lot older, grayer, and more exhausted now, James. So luckily, it wasn't just me. I had a fabulous team around me, and that included this gentleman here to my right, who joined the company 2 and a bit years ago. So, Jason, take it from here.
Well, yeah. So I joined 2 and a bit years ago, and really probably didn't realise the endeavour that we're embarking on. So when I joined, the hop garden had been purchased and was under development, and the first shed was the slab was in the ground. But we had no hops, we had no markets, we had no brand, we had no product, and we only had a few tractor drivers and and Susan, really. And so I thought, well, this would be a bit of fun. My background prior to that was in the wine industry and then the honey industry, and prior to that was in finance. So I thought, well, if New Zealand can grow hops like we can grow Sauvignon Blanc, then we've got something here. So Susan was convincing me that we've had a special product here. I didn't believe it, to be fair. And so we went in 2019, did a fair bit of travelling through the States, and we're going to see brewers, again, with no product at all, and just talking about what we were going to be doing and promising a harvest in 2020. And we had brewers signing up to contract with us, paying us deposits. And I couldn't believe it, to be fair. We're from the other side of the world. People are paying us, large deposits into our account, and really just going off relationship, trust, and belief, I guess. And so we came back from that trip and said to the guys, we've really got to make sure this happens. And to be honest, it's been really tough developing a farm of this scale. It's a big farm, 110 hectare farm. It's no small piece of investment here. And we had our first harvest in 2020. That was very unknown. Really weren't sure how we were going to go. And so we brought over some great American guys who helped us with our first harvest. We had the Germans from the Wolf Gear helping us, and just a lot of good can-do Kiwis and backpackers all helping us. And our 2020 harvest was really good. It was better than what we thought. It was bigger than what we thought. And of course, we finished 3 days before COVID lockdown. So then it was, well, here we go. We've now got a crop. The world's in lockdown, and basically our customers have been in various states of lockdown ever since. So it's been a hell of a journey, to be fair. Nothing I would have predicted, but 2 years on, we've now got another farm under development, and we haven't even paused for a breath. So it doesn't feel like 2 years. It really feels like 10. 10 years backed into 2.
So I guess in the history of hop growing and New Zealand hops specifically, Hop Revolution is pretty young, 4 years old now. So basically, you guys, Hop Revolution, bought a 110 hectare piece of raw land. And what was the feeling like of walking onto that piece of land 4 years ago and realizing the work ahead? With raising poles, running wires, figuring everything out. Like that must have been just an intense moment to take all that in. What was that like, Susan?
To be fair, it's like what I sort of said before, like we were pretty naive about the scale of what we were doing. So most developments in New Zealand, hop developments tend to be quite small, and if they add acres, they add, sort of 10 acres a year or 20 acres a year. And our business model was to go large and to do, a farm of that time that hadn't been developed in New Zealand from scratch. And as I said, I was lucky. I had people around me who were from the kiwi fruit industry, from the wine industry, where New Zealand does those horticultural endeavours really well. So they weren't intimidated. But we had to bring knowledge and skills into doing it on the farm that really were hard to come by. And a lot of it was, learn on the job, learn as you go. So, I had some fantastic guys who had never seen a hop plant before, but helped plant 300,000 of them on the journey on this farm. So it's having really good people around you who, when we came up across a trial or a tribulation, they would just come up with solutions. And I think that's what makes it so exciting as an industry, as an innovation that you can do.
So I guess now that you've had experience in both the wine industry and the hop industry, which is a more temperamental plant, which is more stressful to see from little baby to grown up fruiting living being?
It's hard. I suppose the grape industry is so well researched, and there's lots of good industry bodies where, as a grower, you can go to for advice and things like that. Whereas hops, a lot of it is, if you run into a problem, you've got to go and just talk to another grower and ask, what their experience is, or, have they seen this and try to come up with a solution. So I kind of feel like it's harder because I don't know as much. And, I've got to learn. I had 12 years in the wine industry to gain some knowledge, and I'm trying to cram that sort of into 2 seasons here. So we're definitely, we're doing well. I mean, our plants look amazing. Our yields are well above average. But, you just want to keep on pushing it and trying, more things and to tweak it.
One thing interesting you touched on there is that whenever you've got a problem that there's not a lot of research out there. You just kind of go and ask the guy next door kind of thing. That kind of, and now today there's a lot more information online with forums and everything for brewers. But when I started brewing like 10, 15 years ago, I forget now, like when you had a problem, you went and talked to your mate that worked at another brewery. And like and I think there definitely still is, there's this huge camaraderie between brewers that like people aren't really that secretive about what they're doing. They want the other guy to succeed just as much. Is that kind of the same vibe in the hop industry? Like, can you go over to your mate's farm across the way and find out what the story is, get some advice, share information back and forth?
Yeah, I mean, there's some great local guys here who, you know, I have on speed dial, I think, and you know, constantly asking them questions. But even more international than that, like I've got some American hop grower friends who, you know, if I come up against something that I think they might know the answer to, you know, there'll be an email fired off and they'll share their knowledge. And, you know, some of those guys are, you know, third, fourth generation.
When we travelled through the US, we went through Yakima and Boise, and people were so generous allowing us onto their farms, and we'd go on and they'd show us all their equipment and machinery and talk to us about what worked and, you know, what could be improved on. And we were, you know, taking footage, and we learned so much on that trip. So people were very, very generous. And of course, we invited them all back down, and a lot of them were going to come actually, but COVID stopped that. But in the years to come, we think we'll have a lot more hop growers from out of the States coming to visit us and seeing what we're doing here. Yeah.
Well, you've talked about that trip across the States twice now, Jason. I've got to touch on that for a second, because I believe on that trip is the first time I met you guys.
And we made a fatal mistake that night. We didn't stay over at Crosby. We should have taken our tent and camped in the hop garden, well, like everybody else did. But no, it was great to meet you guys there.
Yeah, I think we were at I think I met you guys at a gigantic brewery in Portland. I think we're all outside drinking pints and eating a fantastic food truck, some Vietnamese food truck that was absolutely amazing. And Susan, being her outgoing self, just strikes up a conversation with me. And I think about 10 to 12 months later, I think we're in conversation about bringing amazing hops over to Europe, which, like, I know that we brought our first shipment of Hop Revolution, Nelson and Motueka, over it's February. I think that was probably September. And now we're already needing a second shipment of Hop Revolution, Nelson and Motueka, which is absolutely fantastic. It's kind of turned into one of those things that Nelson, I think specifically, like in Europe, it's always been one of those hops that's really hard to get. And people really want it. Brewers really want to get their hands on it. But when they do get their hands on it, like sometimes the quality is a bit one way or the other. Either it's really early pick and it's super grassy, or it's really late pick and it's just smells like you opened a can of diesel fuel. Now, what I've experienced with Hop Revolution is like you got that perfect little sweet spot right in the middle, that you have that really bright stuff up front and just the right amount of that petrol-y diesel character at the end. Tell us a little bit about the quality that goes into Hop Revolution and how you guys are able to hit that sweet spot so consistently, and maybe what sets you guys apart and makes you a little bit different than other New Zealand farms or processors, for that matter.
Right. Well, I suppose we were lucky when we had the vision for Hop Revolution in our farm. My initial angel investor was a craft brewer himself. And so when we were designing how we wanted the farm to be set up and what equipment we wanted, I had a pretty firm view that I wanted the Wolf drying system. partly because I call it drying for dummies, because it works so well that, you know, you can dial in your moistures and your temperatures very easily. But also because I'd seen some talks discussing about the quality of the hops that came out of that drying system. And he backed me, and he was, you know, insistent that we go with that technology. And I suppose that was sort of the starting point for a lot of the decisions at Hop Revolution, was that if we were going to do this, we were going to do it with the best equipment and the best knowledge available to us at the times. And, you know, thankfully when Jason came on, that was, you know, a real push from him. Was, you know, it was about, you know, producing a premium product, and taking that striving for greatness in every step, from the farm, from how we run, through to harvest, how we palletize, you know, how we market, how we interact with our brewers and our distributors, people like you.
Yeah, so with this property, well, we've got probably just over 1 kilometre of river frontage. So we're between a river and a hill. And the property is rectangular, it's very long. And across the property, we've got a range of different soil types. So as Susan said, when the development was done, it was a case of let's get the best gear to be able to plant a high proportion of this property in Nelson. And then, so basically half the property is Nelson. And because it's such a long property, we've got different soil types all the way across it. So we started with the gear, this is going to be a high proportion of Nelson. So it's all going to come in a short window. So we've got to have a lot of gear and a lot of good gear. And then we laid the farm out. And so across the property, we're about 50% in Nelson, about 30%, 35% in Motueka, and the balance in Rewaka and Pacific Sunrise. And so across that property, we've got lots of different blocks that are coming on at different times and have different characteristics. And what we've been doing, you know, we're 2 weeks into harvest now, so we spend quite a lot of time looking at when's the right picking decision for each of these blocks. And we've only had one harvest on this property, so there's no history. Prior to this, it was a blackcurrant farm, you know, it was grazing. So there's no hop history on this property. So we're walking the blocks with the farm managers, our nurserymen, Susan and I, and we're just looking at the change across it. And some of them come on earlier because the soil is very bony, like it's right on the river, and there's not a lot of topsoil there. So it's really stony, bony. This year we've had a bit of rain through harvest, so the plants are holding better than they did last year, where ripeness came on much faster. So with Nelson, it ripens and ripens and ripens, and then all of a sudden falls off the cliff. And so it's about picking that right picking decision. And we're no experts, you know, we've only been doing this is only our second year, and we're certainly not experts on the property. But what we're finding is just by spending a lot of time out there, we can see which blocks we should be picking next. And because we've got such a lot of gear on this property, we can harvest at the right time. And that, I think, comes back to those initial investment decisions around how we set the property up. We want it to be a property that only grows aroma hops. We want it to have a high proportion of Nelson, and we want it to have a quality product. So all of that comes back to you've got to have really good equipment and a lot of it to be able to process it quickly. And, you know, and this year things are looking really good. We haven't started our Nelson yet. We're probably 2 days out from starting Nelson.
I did have a question I was wondering if I might ask. So you guys are going through the paddocks and you're assessing the hops and trying to decide which piece of Nelson is fit to pick first and which ones you're going for. What do you use to make decisions? What parameters do you use? Is it moisture? Is it oil content? Is it yield? Yeah. What?
So it's a bit of everything, James. So, like, you know, I've got a lab here, so we do dry matters and we do alpha, betas, oils, HSIs on the blocks as well. But a lot of it is, and I almost hate saying it as a scientist because, you know, it goes against everything. A lot of it is about your senses. So, you know, people like Jason, who's, you know, been in the wine industry, you know, it's that thing where you walk and you look at the plants and you know, we just spend our time crushing hops and smelling them. And you get better and better each year. And, you know, even from, you know, the start of this harvest to now, about being able to predict how soon from harvest a block might be. And the science is definitely great. I mean, it's been a weird season where all our alpha acids are a lot higher than last year. And that was kind of, freaking me out until I did some research. And because we've had this weird growing season, it's been cold and it's been wet, and that's actually driven our alphas up. So we can't just rely on, because if I had picked for alpha acids when they had hit the window, we would have picked too early. And it's just, that thing where, with the blocks being so different, we've got blocks almost side by side that can be out of sync with each other. So we do jump between blocks, we'll harvest one and then we might move down the road a bit and pick another one. So it's definitely an interesting learning experience and out of sync from last year. So blocks that we picked in a particular order last year, and even varieties, that's different this year. So sunrise came off much earlier, and if we just stuck to our plan of what happened last year, we would have missed it.
So when you're going around, you're like, obviously you have the science aspect of it where you're assessing stuff, like you said, like alpha content, but the rest of it then I guess is on the nose, and you're actually just rubbing hops and smelling. So what happens is does that aroma profile kind of change over the space of 2 or 3 weeks, and kind of what happens?
Not even that, James. Like, it's almost like the hard thing with Nelson is it's low alphas, low dry matters, low aroma up until honestly probably a week. So I started testing the Nelson probably a week to 10 days ago. And, the first block will be ready in like tomorrow or the next day. So it's really quick. And I think that's the hard thing is, we have these lovely plans at the beginning of harvest. And we thought based on last year would know even more, but it's changed up so much. And it's just a growing season. It's, the plants have responded in a really different way.
So a lot of it is down to human judgment as to when something's ready to pick, with a little bit of science in the background.
Yeah, a little bit of science.
So it sounds like you're using the empirical data, the science, to narrow it down to a large window, and then you're using the human aspect to narrow it down to a tight window. Is that that kind of?
It is, and we've got 12 days really to get it all in, and that's a case of which one comes in first. We're running a day shift and a night shift. But what's interesting in sensory that we're getting is the feedback from brewers. So we get feedback from brewers that really prefer some of those later tones that are coming through, and others really prefer the earlier stuff. So it's not exactly scientific to say, right, we want everything to hit this window, because that's not what every brewer wants. And so over time, what we're trying to do is get some later stuff, some earlier stuff, and in between, obviously, because we've got brewers who definitely like the late diesel characteristics, definitely, and others that definitely like the early. And so we're trying to have about 4 to 5 lots of our Nelson that we can hopefully provide a range for brewers to something there that they'll like.
And you're keeping all of those lots separate rather than sending lots of lots over a large picking window into a homogenization tank and slamming them all together. So you're keeping
So that's right. Well, what we do is our blocks go down to about 1.5 hectares. Our biggest blocks are about 3.5 hectares. So when we pick a block, we keep that separate. So we run it through the kilns. Kilns go into our conditioning boxes. We've got 6 conditioning boxes. And so we can keep everything separate. They're all baled, and we've got all of the bale numbers, all the way through. So when we're doing our blends, we can say, well, let's take these 50 bales with these 10 bales and these, and then that's what we create. So everything is kept separate, right down to that block level until we decide to blend, which is done really just before we're palletizing. So, we're palletizing a little bit here in New Zealand, the majority of it in the US. So from the time we get it off, our first shipment left yesterday, actually, going to the US. First bales were going to the US. So between now and palletizing, which will be in about 5-6 weeks' time, we'll get feedback from brewers. We'll then decide our lots, and then we'll be palletizing.
Awesome. So yeah. In a portfolio of companies that Loughran Brewing Stores works with, we're fortunate enough to work with some fantastic American hop growers, Crosby Hops, Indie Hops, Yakima Chief. And there's always kind of a hole in the portfolio that you're looking to fill and find a great partner to not just fill that hole, but to provide the highest quality stuff that can go in that box. What has it meant for Loughran Brewing Stores to bring on the brand of Hop Revolution and be able to supply some absolutely cracking hops?
I think it's been fantastic. It's been fantastic for us, and it's been fantastic for the brewers that we get to work with. Just seeing the excitement on brewers' faces when we start talking about the kind of availability that we have, and the fact that it's Nelson, Motueka, and Milwaukee, and that it's just them. There's a niceness to that the portfolio isn't like, we're not trying to do everything from New Zealand. We're doing these three, and Hop Rev are doing them really, really well. And being able to talk to brewers and show them that we have the ability to get them these, it's almost like the story of El Dorado, where people have heard stories of fantastic Nelson and have maybe had a friend who drank a beer that had it once and they were never able to really brew with it, and introducing them to having that convenience of availability where it's on their doorstep. They can get it. They don't have to try and figure out how to import 100 kilos all the way from the South Island. So that's been wonderful, and just working with Jason and Susan has been fantastic. Like, you guys have been, I'm incredibly proud of the fact that this evening is the middle of harvest. You guys are up to your neck in stuff to do, and you've taken an hour out of literally one of your busiest weeks of the year to spend it with us. So I'm really, really grateful for that. Thank you very much. It's been anything we've asked you guys to do, you've done it immediately. Your branding and marketing support have been spectacular. The logistics have gone off without a hitch, and best of all, the product has been super in terms of quality. So, I don't know. I don't really have any significant point of complaint or even room for improvement, to be honest. I'm just looking forward to getting down to New Zealand next year and having a look around.
That's all, James.
You're too kind, James. You're giving us a much needed boost in the middle of harvest.
We will be pumped again.
Yeah, no.
But James, I'd also like to remind you, when we started talking with you, it was the middle of your harvest, and you took time to, connect with us and set everything up when you were under the pump. So,
10 o'clock at night, you worked all day, and then you're sitting there tired as talking to us Kiwis on the other side of the world. Yeah. And it's been great.
I say it over and over again, but one day we're going to have an opportunity to drink the same type of beverage at the same time. Because anytime we chat, it's either me drinking beer and you're drinking coffee, or I'm drinking coffee and you're drinking beer. We're never enjoying the same beverage, and that is incredibly disappointing. But one day we will, and that will be fantastic. And I think it's just James really only thinks about his expenses paid trip to New Zealand. That's what. The
main reason I do this job is for expenses paid trip around the world and free beer. That's what. Yeah.
Well, you have to bring Will as well, James. Sorry about that. It's a package deal.
Susan's right. They're going to have a no James Loughran sign at the gate if you don't bring me.
Fine. You can come.
I'm your ticket, buddy.
You can come.
You can come, but you're in the back of the bus, Will.
The back of the plane.
All this room up here in first class.
They have good craft beer down in economy. Don't worry.
Yeah. So yeah, let's start thinking about wrapping up. You guys are too generous for all of your time this morning. So just really one more question, I guess. So we've got Nelson, we've got Mochueca, we've got the new kid on the block, Pacific Sunrise, and then we've got everyone's favorite horrible hop to grow, Rawaka. The fairy dust of the hop world. So what's next? What are there plans to bring other varieties online? Or are we just going to hold tight with those 4? What are the plans?
Well, funnily enough, I was just out in my science block this morning. So we have the ability to grow some of the newer New Zealand varieties. So Waihiti, Kohatu, Waimea, and Moteri. And so on our second farm, which next year will be having its first harvest, we'll have some of those varieties as well.
Yeah. So what we've done is we're developing our second 115, 120 hectare farm at the moment, but the first 20 hectares we're harvesting now. In fact, we've just done about half of that block in the last couple of days. So we're ferrying them down the road. It's only about 4 kilometres away. And that's got some other varieties coming through on there. And what we might do is just to profile that farm is do a blend off that farm of some of these newer varieties that we're doing. Our very first, I guess, priority is to really nail this Rewaka, which is why I'm now grey. And yeah, it's just we really want to nail it. See, there's just the odd grey coming through. It's probably the light. You probably can't see them. But we really want to nail it. So this year we got a lot lower Rewaka than what we wanted to get. It's such a fickle plant. We're pulling our hair out on it, but we're going back to basics and we're not giving up on it. So we want to prove to all of our shareholders and our brewers that we can grow this and grow it well. At the moment, it's a variety that financially you look at it and it just doesn't stack up at all. The yields are so low on it and so inconsistent, but the quality is so amazing. And to give you an example, brewers want it. We only opened it for sale for 2 weeks last year, and we had far more contracted in those 2 weeks than really what we would have liked to have. We thought, okay, we'll be happy at contracting only half of what we thought we'd produce. We only contracted for 2 weeks. And we've produced a little bit less than that even. So we've been going back to the brewers and saying, guys, stick with us. We're still going here, but we can't get the volumes that you want. So we want to nail that. That's if we can really nail that, for us and for other growers in New Zealand, that'd be good. But hopefully Susan's genetics and PhD will come into play here. And then with some of these other varieties, they'll be new to a lot of brewers. So we just want to start getting some feedback around, what do you think of this? Do you like it? Don't you? What could we do around it? But the powerhouse really for us is Nelson, Mochueca. Pacific Sunrise, we've got a few hectares of that in the ground, and we're putting in quite a bit more actually on our next farm. And we've had a lot of really good feedback on that varietal. So that's also a new one to try if people haven't tried that.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, thank you. Like I said, and James has said, thank you guys for joining us, especially whenever you're dead in the middle of harvest, whenever everything is going on around you. So thanks for starting your day with us. I guess it's time we let Susan go out in the fields and smell some cones and decide what lot's getting picked today, I guess.
Yeah. Thanks, Will. Thanks, James.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome to talk.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you guys soon.